One thing we know right now is that life does not slow down. The world does not wait. But something that I found recently that was built right into my iPhone gave me a glimpse of what it means to stay spiritually steady, even when things are moving all around me, when the ground is all shaking and turbulent. So welcome again, y'all, to another episode of Uncut Gems. I'm your host, Jay Floyd. I am a life coach, a technology leader. I'm a speaker, author. This is going to be a good one, y'all. Thank you for everybody who tuned into my most recent ones. I know I got kind of deep on the personal side. A couple of the things that we talked about recently were my brother Julius, his impact on my life. One of the days that my most traumatic days, the day that I drowned. We talked about that recently. It was a couple of episodes dedicated to that. And today I'm going to ease up on the personal stuff. Y'all may feel like, we're just starting to get into this guy's life. It's not going to be all about my life. But this actually does start with personal story. So listen, I grew up, I would get motion sick my entire life, right? Like if anybody who's read my book, The Poet Who Watched the Whole Parade, available now on Amazon, by the way, shameless plug. Anyone who's read that knows that my early life, we were in cars a lot, right? We were driving around. We were a little bit itinerant, transient. We didn't always have a place to stay. And when we did, it was usually, there was a lot of back and forth that needed to be done, running errands, doing things, not a lot of stability. So we were in the car a lot. And this is the 80s. So my mother was always driving. My brother was always in the passenger seat. And I was always in that back seat. But there was no seat belts, right? Like it wasn't that time, right? It was no click at a ticket, right? So we didn't really use seat belts. So one of the things I would do is I would sit in the middle of the back seat and I would lean all the way forward, talk and listen to my brother and my mother talk, right? And I was a big comic book guy, so I would usually bring comic books into the car with me because sometimes we would be gone the entire day. And I would have my X-Men or my New Mutants or my Power Pack. So pretty sure that is not one of the most popular resurgent comic franchises. You're not going to see a lot of that at Comic-Cons and on the cinematic universe. You're not going to see a lot of that. But I would read a lot of comic books. I was a huge comic book guy. That was my thing. I had about 300 at my highest point, and I would bring them into the car. And one of the things that I started to notice is every time I would try to read the comic book, I would get sick. I would get hot, nauseous, dizzy, right? And my mom would say, "Hey, that's car sickness," and she rolled the window down and say, "Hey, get some fresh air." And this went on like nearly every time, right? I'd have my comic books there. I'd try to read. Sometimes I would even try to lay down in the back seat and read my comic books, and I would get sick again. We didn't really know really like what was causing it. It's just something that happens, right? My mom was just like, "Hey, you're a person who gets car sick, so try to roll the windows down." Now, as I went on through life, it would keep happening, right? And we didn't have a lot of money. I didn't have a lot of money earlier in my early adulthood and in teen years. So a lot of times I was riding in people's cars and I would, get sick and I roll the windows down. It's just something I had to deal with. And as I got older and got more agency in my life, I started to recognize the patterns of my life, right? So one of the things I started to realize is when I try to read something, when I'm riding in a car, that's when I can trigger it. So one of the things I do is when I'm a passenger, I don't read. You're not going to see my phone out much, right? Another thing I noticed, it doesn't happen when I'm driving, right? So I kind of over the course of my 20s and 30s and 40s developed into being a person who almost always is going to drive. I'm usually driving if I'm going somewhere, right? It's highly likely you're going to see me not as the passenger. And, just having more awareness in my life, I started to understand, man, what is motion sickness? Because it seems to be tied to me reading and goes away when I'm not reading or goes away when I'm driving. So, me being in the tech world, eventually I looked it up, started doing some research on what is car sickness, right? Which is ultimately motion sickness. And I looked it up and it said, it's triggered because of like your inner ear and your balance and equilibrium. And it's actually caused by dissonance, which is one of my favorite words, right? Which means kind of like the difference between what your mind believes and what's true. So car sickness in the way that I experienced it is being caused because my eyes are looking at either a comic book, a page, my phone, or when I'm driving, focused on the road. So my eyes, if I'm looking at my phone or a comic book, my eyes are reading the words. So they're going left to right over the words, and they don't recognize the movement of the car anymore. But my body does, right? So there's dissonance. My brain is experiencing two different things, and it's disorienting, and it causes that sickness. The reason why it doesn't happen when I don't read is because my eyes are not locked in on the book or the phone or those words that don't look like what the motion that the car is taking. The reason why it doesn't happen when I'm driving, obviously, is because I'm focused on the road. So I see exactly the motion that the car is taking, right? So, started to realize that, and that's cool. That was just how we proceeded. And then something interesting happened. About 2 weeks ago, I was scrolling through my phone and something said, hey, for anybody who has experienced motion sickness, Apple has already put together something that fixes that. And I'm like, wait a second, what? And so I scroll through the app and it says, hey, if you go to settings, accessibility, and turn on like motion recognition, then actually, and for anybody who's reading this, who's listening to this, I want to make sure I get it accurate. So if you go to settings, and into accessibility, boom, and into motion, boom, there is a selection there that says show vehicle motion cues, right? So if you turn this on, these dots, right? There's 8 dots, 4 down the side, each side of the phone. Those dots appear, and those dots pick up motion of any vehicle that you're in. And they move according to the motion. So they're always in sync with the vehicle that you're in. Now, obviously, what this does is helps your brain out a little bit, right? Because now if I'm scrolling my phone, I can focus in on the words, but I can never lose sight in my periphery. I can never really lose sight of these 8 dots, which will move up, down, left, right, diagonal. They'll move in sync with the vehicle that I'm in. So it's a constant reminder to my brain. It's a constant reminder to my brain that I'm moving. It takes away the dissonance, right? It takes it away. So I don't get sick. There's not that confusion in my brain that triggers nausea, that triggers sweating, that triggers dizziness. That sickness doesn't get triggered. And I was like, man, I hope this is going to work. I set it up and it worked. Rode in a car as a passenger, it worked. Even flew in a plane, it worked. And I'm like, wow, this is great. Wish I knew about it earlier, but glad I know now. This is really good. And something hit me where it was like, this is what the world is like. This having these dots and having that, the antidote for sickness of a split in your mind, this cognitive dissonance, having it makes me feel exactly how I feel in the world today. Whether it's politics, whether it's any of these spiritual battles, right? Motion sickness, again, like I said at the beginning, motion sickness is disorientation that's caused by the dissonance between stillness and movement, recognizing stillness and recognizing movement, and knowing which is which, right? So if I pick up my phone, let's say my phone is the word of God. Let's say my phone are the things that I know are true, the universal truths that are promised and have never failed, the things that are greater than me. Let's say I'm looking at that, I'm reading that. Let's say I got my Bible app open and I'm reading things that are universal truths. That's stillness. That's stillness. But here's the problem. A lot of us are reading that. A lot of us are focused in on that. But we're in a vehicle that's moving. So there's dissonance every day. Every day we're reading our Bibles. We're giving ourselves positive affirmation. We're working on our spirit. We're focused in on that stillness. But our brain knows, you can't lie, we are in a vehicle that's moving all over the place at a fast rate of speed. There's all these changes. There's all these political changes. There's all these technology changes. There's all these economic changes. There's so many things. There's a battle for this. There's a battle for that. That's this versus that. That's this versus this. So even though my eyes are focused in on what I know is true, what I know is greater than me, my brain and my body know we're in a vehicle that's moving. And guess what? A lot of us are sick. A lot of us are nauseous. A lot of us are dizzy. But I want to tell you, it's already been fixed. It's already been fixed. Apple didn't do it. But there already is an antidote for this sickness. And it is a lot like, you can imagine it a lot like the antidote, the functionality that Apple did supply. There are dots on our screen. There are spiritual orientation tools that will move with the car. They'll move with our vehicle. They'll move with our culture, our time, our emotions, our tech. And they will help us interpret that movement without being overwhelmed by it or without thinking that it's the functionality. Because here's the key. Here's the key, the thing that makes the reason why Apple's solution even works, because they are literally putting dots on your screen. It could mess up all the apps. It could mess up everything that you're focused on. But guess what? They made them non-functional. They don't impact anything. If I'm in an app, I can still click a button if one of those dots is over that button. It doesn't have any function. That's exactly how our spiritual dots are. They're not functional, they're formational. They don't change what's true. They don't override the word of God. They don't override greatness. They don't override the things that are greater than us, the universal truths, but they do keep you aware of where you are. They keep you aware. They help you to keep focused on the screen without getting sick. What are some examples of dots? If you open your book, you can see one is Proverbs. Proverbs, wisdom. There's a lot of wisdom going on. Find wise proverbs. Find wise people. There are wise people, and you have to use discernment. There's a lot of wisdom around. It doesn't mean that you start worshiping people who have that wisdom, but there's a lot of wisdom that you can learn from. Healthy technology use. AI is healthy. Anything is healthy. A lot of these things are healthy in moderation and with correct focus. And again, these things don't have functionality to override what you know is true, but it doesn't mean they can't help. Right? Another one, rhythms of community and rest. Find your community. Go deep into your community. Build with people, meet people, and then pull away, rest. Have alone time. Mentors, devotionals, coaches. These are dots. We are in a fallen, fast-moving world. There's debates over DEI, there's AI shifts, there's political chaos. None of it changes who created you or who created me. But we can't pretend the world is not moving. If we're ignorant to the movement, then we get disoriented. The goal is not to freeze life, but the goal is to stay rooted while it's moving. Right? Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." Stillness is internal awareness of God, even in external motion. My call to action for you, don't worship the dots, but don't ignore them either. They're out there. Keep your eyes focused on what you know is true, things that are greater than you. Don't move in fear. Do not move in fear. Use the dots to stay clear in a moving world. I love y'all. I appreciate y'all for tuning in to my show again. And let's keep rocking. I'll talk to y'all next time. Peace. Ready to revolutionize your content creation? Discover Deep Brain AI, the cutting-edge solution in AI video synthesis. Create lifelike AI videos with ease, ideal for presentations, educational content, or just boosting your digital marketing. Your AI avatar waits to deliver messages with natural expressions and natural voices. It'll be just like hearing and seeing you and me. Experience the future of communication with Deep Brain AI. Discover more right now at what'sgood.work and click on our link that says visit our sponsor.